Hello everyone, and welcome to another lesson on the principles of marketing. Now I'm very sorry for the long delay between this video and the previous, but as you know, life happens. So I apologize, and hopefully I'll try to be a bit more organized and more on time in the future. Now, to begin with, what we'll be talking about will be setting the foundations for the marketing strategy. Now, this lesson is all about marketing strategy, but in this part, we're not going to be getting to that yet. First, we need to see what exactly are we going to lay down in order to begin our marketing strategy. So, as we move forward, we're going to be talking about those different elements that need to be there before we even begin to start. So, let's begin. Now, we have a couple of stages for preparing the marketing strategy. Stage 1, we have developing the mission statement. Now, the mission statement is something that is very core to an organization, something that is very much essential to any kind of activity. And we'll talk about it in more detail later, exactly how it should be done, what it should be done, but you always have to keep in mind the vision and mission whenever you're doing anything like this. After developing the mission, you then set the objectives. You determine, all right, now that I know what exactly my organization's purpose is, what am I going to do in order to achieve this kind of mission? What am I going to do to achieve the purpose of my organization? After setting down the objectives, we need to determine the portfolio. What is my company selling? Why is it selling it? Which are the things should I continue selling? Which should I stop? Which should I focus on? And so on. Finally, the last stage in this step is to actually conduct the plan, but like I said, this is not going to be covered in this lesson. Parts 1 through 3, these are what we're going to be focusing on throughout our video here in order to just lay these kind of foundations. Now in step 1, you want to develop the mission statement. Now the mission statement is something crucial, like I said. It's not something where you're just dealing with some kind of, let's say advertising thing. Our company's mission is to develop the best quality, blah, 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 at the best possible price. No, that's not a good mission. Why? Well, think about it. If every single company is trying to do the highest quality at the lowest price, then what are the other companies doing, Think about other companies that are not trying to do the highest quality. I mean, did Kia or Hyundai, when it first came out, was it trying to compete in the luxury market and trying to do the highest quality thing? No. It was trying to make a lower quality car, but at an affordable price. And that was, while it might not necessarily be reflected in their mission statement per se, that was their driving mission, was that this is how we're going to compete. We're going to make affordable cars for the masses, and this is how we're going to enter the market. And that's perfectly fine. On the complete opposite side, you could have companies that try to compete on the luxury market and provide very expensive products, but are very luxury products. And they don't mind. They're not trying to compete on price. Think of Rolex. Think of Apple. Think of Rolls-Royce. These are all companies that are trying to deliver the highest quality, yes, but not at the best price. The mission delves into the core of the organization. It delves into the very reason that it exists. Now here we're not just dealing with a mission statement in general. Here we're supposed to be dealing with the mission statement from a marketing perspective. We want a market-oriented mission statement. Now this will differ from a regular business mission statement simply because the market-oriented mission statement has to deal with the kind of value that you'll provide the customers. A mission statement talking about how, for example, the organization wants to grow or wants to provide a certain product or a certain way is more of a business-oriented, and it's fine and it's necessary, but not what we're looking for. A market-oriented mission statement is much closer to something like Microsoft, where it says something along the lines that I'm paraphrasing here. We empower people, individuals, organizations, and companies to do more. And this is a very powerful statement. This is one that really cuts to the core of Microsoft's value to its customers, whether it's business customers, organization customers, individuals, is that it helps them do more. It helps them be more productive. And all of their product portfolios is aimed around that aspect of productivity, of doing more. It's a really great example of a market-oriented mission statement. So before we can even think about making a marketing strategy, we need to realize what is our market-oriented mission statement. Now that we have our mission statement, this can then delve into the objectives. What are we going to do to achieve this kind of vision and mission? Well, we're going to do 1 and 2 and 3, we're going to go here, we're going to dive into this market, etc., etc. But objectives are not about just setting, 1, 2, 3, and just, setting out some, I want to do X and Y and Z, and that's it. No. Objectives have to be made, number 1, in accordance with the mission. I'm trying to empower organizations to do more, like in the case of Microsoft. All right. Well, what are you going to do? What are the steps that you're going to take to achieve this? Well, there is a certain process that we use in order to make good objectives. We call them SMART objectives. SMART not as in intelligent, but SMART as an acronym. SMART. What does this mean? Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. These are the 5 criteria that, based on which an objective can be considered to be good or not. Let's start with specific. If I'm going to put a kind of objective, it needs to be something very well known. If I say, for example, I want to increase sales by 5%. That's specific, 5%. If I increase it by less than 5%, I failed in achieving this perspective. If I increase it by more than 5%, it then becomes overachieved, and that's a good thing, and so on. If I don't have it specific, how am I going to measure it against anything? How am I going to determine if I succeed? Like, what if I just say, I want to increase sales? Okay. By how much? So this is the first aspect. The second aspect, in terms of measurable. Well, there are things that can be measured, and there are things that either can't be measured or it's not sure that it can be measured. Let's take, for example, quality. What if I say, I want to increase quality by 5%? Let's write it up here. Increase quality, by 10%. Go back. What does this mean? How do I measure quality? If I say something like the average lifespan of a product, that's something measurable. I can measure the lifespan, but I can't just measure quality. It's not really something that can be measured in any way. The next aspect is being achievable. When I make an objective, I'm not going to say I want to be number 1 in the market in 5 years. It's unrealistic, or maybe for some companies it's realistic, but for the most part, that's not realistic. An objective is something like we were talking about, increasing sales by 5%. That's achievable. It can be done. Now, objectives should be ambitious. They should strive for something difficult, something that is really worthwhile to attain. But it should still be something that is possible to be done by the company. Don't go for outlandish objectives. Then you have relevant. Relevant has to relate to the mission and the vision. If it's not related to the mission, why is this your objective? So whenever developing an objective, you always need to consider what exactly it is that you're doing. What exactly is the core reason for your company's existence, and does this objective relate to it? Finally, we have timely, as in it needs to have a specific time frame. If I increase sales by 5% after 5 years, have I achieved my objective properly? Probably not. This is more of an objective over 1 year. And this is something that we need to consider, that whenever you have an objective, it needs to have a specific time frame. So let's develop a specific objective. Increasing sales by 5% over 1 year. This is related to the company where it's trying to make more sales, make more profit, so it's achievable. It's relevant. 5% is something that is doable, so it's achievable. I can measure sales very easily. It's part of my accounting. It's specific because I talk about exactly how much I want to increase it by. And it's timely by talking about the amount of time that it'll take to be done. That is how you make a SMART objective. The next step that we go into is in designing the portfolio. Okay? Now, what is a business portfolio? Business portfolio is actually a very, in many ways, a complicated concept. It is the totality of what exactly your business is. Let's take a very, very complicated company, something like Disney. Disney owns toy manufacturing, licensing agreements, it makes movies, it makes video games, it's a media giant, it owns ESPN, and many, many other companies and many things. All of that in its totality make up its business portfolio. Now, within the business portfolio, you have different elements. These are what we call strategic business units, or SBUs. Strategic business units are when I take a group or like a product line or several product lines and I put it together to say that this is one of my strategic units. Now, here comes a very big complexity as to how do I determine what is my strategic business unit. Take, for example, something like a really big company like Unilever, okay, where it has like this whole big dental line. It has toothbrushes and toothpastes and dental floss and mouthwash and all these different things. Now, here's a question. Should the toothbrushes be considered an SBU and the dental floss be considered an SBU and the mouthwash be considered an SBU? Are all of these together one strategic business unit? This is a decision that has to be made by upper management, and it's something that's very difficult and in many cases arbitrary as to why did I group these products as an SBU, and the implications are quite large, as we will see later. So from here we need to determine, first of all, what is our business portfolio, what is the group of things that we're trying to sell, and what role do the SBUs play in our organization. Now, to determine that, we need to do what is known as a portfolio analysis. One of the tools we have to use a portfolio analysis is the BCG Matrix. The BCG Matrix is made by BCG, stands for Boston Consultant Group, for analyzing the totality, the different portfolios, the different strategic business units in a company, and seeing which should you focus on, which are important, which should be gotten rid of, and so on. Okay? It's actually relatively simple, and that's both its best part and its worst part, but let's take it one by one. BCG is based on relative market share and the market growth rate. So, something that has high relative market share and high market growth rate, think about something like the smartwatches, for example. They're the dominant kind of the iWatches, They're the dominant kind of smartwatches, so they have a high market share, and they are growing significantly recently. These smartwatches are considered what we might consider a star. They have the possibility for huge growth, for increasing, and they're already very profitable. Okay? But sometimes I reach a part where the market becomes saturated. Okay? Sometimes something like the iPhone, which used to be a star, suddenly is so filled with the market, it still has a very high market share. It's still very profitable, but it stops growing. This is when it turns into a cash cow. This is something that's very important for funding my activities, something I need to focus on, but I need to realize that maybe these cash cows don't represent the future of my company. They're profitable, they're important, but in many ways I use them to fund trying to get new stars rather than them being a means to an end by itself. Then we have the dog. The dog is something that has low market share and low market growth. Now, these dogs might be profitable, but just barely lumbering along, just barely covering their cost, maybe making a small profit, and so on. But just their existence is taking up a large opportunity cost from the company to focus on something else. So the BCG usually says if you have a dog, you want to get rid of it. Now, this is not necessarily in all cases, but it is generally good advice to follow. Finally, I have something where it has low market share, but it's currently growing pretty fast. It's growing in maybe its profitability and so on. And this is something that maybe has the potential to one day become a star, and maybe not. And that's why it's a question mark. You're really not sure about what it is. The cash cow is useful because it's always making money. The star is essential because it's making money and it's growing. But the question mark may one day make money and may not. And this you have to determine whether you're going to compete to increase investment in it to try to turn it into a star, or whether to get rid of it, or what to do. Now, the BCG Matrix is very useful, but has a couple of shortcomings. For one, it's very simplistic. That's one issue. And then another issue is that deciding on the SBUs can be very difficult. When I'm trying to put them into the different categories, let's say that, for example, let's go back to the dental hygiene example. I have the toothbrushes and the dental floss and the mouthwash and all of these things. What if the toothbrushes is really growing, but the mouthwash stopped growing, but all of them are in one SBU? It affects the average and it affects how I look at it. Why did I choose those to be one in SBU? Why didn't I choose that the toothbrushes to be one thing and mouthwash to be something else? A lot of times determining what is an SBU can be very arbitrary, and that can have a big impact on whether I consider a product part of a cash cow or part of a star, or by itself maybe a dog. And this is something that really needs to be considered. The process is long and expensive. Reviewing every single product, every portfolio, every line, every different thing, and then determining the market share and the market growth and the market thing is a very intensive process and not something that can easily be done on a whim. Finally, the BCG Matrix only deals with the now. The most powerful example I can give for something like this is talking about Gorilla Glass. Gorilla Glass was researched, I think, several decades ago, and at the time it was too expensive to really be profitable for anyone to really want it on the market. It was strong. It was pretty strong, but not like bulletproof and so on. The company had no use for it, so it just lumbered along. It was for a long time a dog. And then suddenly, with the advent of smartphones, Gorilla Glass went from something basically useless to now something essential in all smartphones. Almost overnight, it went from a dog to a star. If they used the BCG Matrix, said Gorilla Glass is a dog, let's divest it, let's sell it, it would have been a massive loss for the company. So in addition to the BCG Matrix, we like to look at the product market expansion grid that, rather than looking to the past, it tries to look more towards the future. The product market expansion grid deals with 4 different aspects, whether you're dealing with an existing market, or a new market, or a new product, or an existing product. And based on that, it determines what exactly your strategy should be going into this new thing. So let's assume, for example, I have a product, let's say the iPhone, but I want to increase its market share. I am doing, in this case, market penetration. I increase my advertising, I try to give it discounts, and that has its own strategy that I try to follow. Let's say I'm dealing with the same market, but a new product, like the iWatch. In this case, we're dealing with product development, where I need to increase people's awareness, relate to maybe the diffusion of innovation theory, understand how people might accept it, and so on. So that has its own strategy. Let's say I have the same product, but want to go into a new market, like the iPhone trying to get into China. That's what we call market development, and that has its own strategy. And then finally we have, let's say you have a completely new market and a completely new product in order to go into it. This is what we know as diversification. All of these elements have a different strategy, and based on which one you're going for affects the strategic marketing plan that you develop later on. To conclude today's lesson, we took the essentials of putting the foundation for a strategic marketing plan. In the next lesson, we'll start to understand how to actually develop that market plan using all these things that we have the mission, the objectives, and the portfolio, and so on, and put it all together into something comprehensive. I hope you all enjoyed today's lesson. If you did, consider subscribing below. If you want to see more videos like this, please click on the videos on the side. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Thank you.